social networks. Now, there is a concern that reports of high turnout or heavy voting for certain candidates will affect results for other parts of the United States. For example, if a landslide or upset is reported in the East, it can sap the will and morale of some groups gearing up to vote, say, in the Midwest. And while networks will be careful not to engage in what's called trending, the Republicans and Democrats will be furiously mounting last-ditch efforts to compensate for initial poor results in some battleground states by whipping up the party faithful in states that have yet to start voting or where results can still change based on late voters. So when we return, we'll look at some factors that could affect the outcome in the American elections and what else is at stake beside control of the White House.
Let me warn you, and let me warn the nation, against the smooth evasion that says, of course we believe these things. We believe in social security. We believe in work for the unemployed. We believe in saving homes. Cross our hearts and hope to die. We believe in all these things. But we do not like the way the present administration is doing them. Just turn them over to us. We will do all of them. We will do more of them. We will do them better. And most important of all, the doing of them will not cost anybody anything.
That was Franklin D. Roosevelt campaigning for re-election in what turned out to be the biggest landslide ever seen up to that time. His victory was accompanied by a sweep that ensured Democratic control of the U.S. Congress for a full decade, from 1936 to 1946. Now, the battle fought on Election Day in America will be as old as democracy itself, to get your supporters to the voting booth and to discourage supporters of the other side from making their own big push. Robocalling, for example, is one modern way or one modern twist to this system. It's been a controversial reality in electoral contests for some years now, ever since Karl Rove and the Republicans began to use them extensively to demolish their opponents. As the website you see on your screen offering robocalling software proclaims, and I hope to God Filipino politicians don't buy this, robocalls are cheaper and more efficient than traditional flyers or having actual volunteers make actual calls. Now, here's an actual robocall someone received, recorded and posted on YouTube. Have a listen.
Hello, I'm calling for John McCain and the RNC because you need to know that Barack Obama has worked closely with domestic terrorist Bill Ayers, whose organization bombed the U.S. Capitol, the Pentagon, a judge's home, and killed Americans. And Democrats will enact an extreme leftist agenda if they take control of Washington. Barack Obama and his Democratic allies lack the judgment to lead our country. This call was paid for by McCain-Palin 2008 and the Republican National Committee at 202-863-8500.
Now, there are quite a few more of these things on YouTube. Just search for robocall. Now, robocalls are meant to help inspire turnout. Now, as The Economist recently reported, the Obama campaign's worried that the youth vote may turn out to be a dud yet again, so much of the campaign has focused on getting more reliable baby boomers and senior citizens registered and motivated to turn up on election day. Republicans, too, have focused on senior citizens, evangelical Christians, and so on, and both sides have devoted energy and resources to the logistics of getting people to the polling precincts. Now, the Election Assistance Commission in the U.S. recently issued a call for volunteers, predicting heavy turnout. In most states, turnout was in the 40% range in 2004. This year, many states are expecting a turnout in the 80 to 90% range. Now, nationally, the average has been in the 30 to 50% range, with only a few exceptions. A high of 63% in 1960, 61% in 1964, and 60% in 1968, but never above 56% in the 4 decades since. Now, John McCain's pollsters think a turnout exceeding 2004's 60.7% of voters is quite possible. That turnout itself was the highest since 1968. Now, if 122 million voters voted in 2004, the McCain pollsters think 130 million voters might just cast their votes. Indeed, turnout could be historic, but part of that record-breaking turnout could make things worse for the party machineries. You see, a lot of Americans seem to have made up their minds long before November 4. Early voting has been taking place in many states. All this suggests that in a heated race, quite a few citizens have already made up their minds early on. Who were these groups? The Associated Press reported that in the South, there was heavy turnout of African-American early voters. Urban residents in cities that often vote Democrat also voted early in record numbers. The one group that doesn't seem to be among the early birds are the youth. And some observers suggest that this only means that the youth may turn out and vote, but at the last minute, since Gen Xers and Yers are notorious procrastinators. Now, others say that if this is true, it may upset the survey results even more. That's because many younger voters don't have landlines anymore. And add to this other minorities who may not be accessible by landline-based surveys, and so were they properly represented in the surveys which focused on people with landlines. Now, this brings up another question brought up by the surge in early voting by African Americans. What about whites? Enter the so-called Bradley effect, which most American media tried to tiptoe around until the BBC's reportage brought it front and center. In 1992, Mayor Tom Bradley of Los Angeles, an African American, ran for governor of California, and he led in the polls all throughout the campaign, but lost to his white rival on election day. Now, pollsters, stumped over how they got it wrong, later figured out that the respondents must have lied to the pollsters, saying race didn't really matter when it actually did when they cast their votes. They actually cast their votes for the white guy. Now, could people be lying to the surveys, pretending not to care about race, but with race as an effective factor affecting the actual votes they cast? The conventional wisdom puts the percentage points that could be affected at anywhere from 6 to 8 points, usually among white voters only. That is, race could add or subtract anywhere up to 6 to 8 points from a candidate's survey results. Now, I think the pollsters and pundits are also sniffing around to see if this effect might be taking place among other groups, such as Asians or Latinos. Among older Filipino Americans, for example, it's been widely discussed that they tend to vote like white Republicans, conservatively, and if you survey Filipino American comments on the internet, for example, it seems race might just be a factor in their voter preferences too. So take a look at these Real Clear Politics aggregates of the various state-specific surveys. Here's Florida. Now, all the surveys put Obama ahead, averaging out to a 4.2 point lead for Obama, with a maximum of a 7-point lead according to the Los Angeles Times Bloomberg survey, and a slim, possibly statistically insignificant 2-point lead for Obama according to the Mason-Dixon survey. Now, if race, with its potential for up to 6 to 8 points shifting, enters the equation, McCain, however, based on these survey results, could still clinch Florida. Now take a look at Ohio. Put together, the surveys for that state suggest a 4.2 point lead for Obama. Now, if race doesn't lead to a big switch, Obama stands to win Ohio, bellwether state, which the Republicans need for the presidency. Again, Obama has the most to lose and McCain the most to gain from race affecting the actual results. Obama's biggest lead survey-wise is according to Los Angeles Times Bloomberg survey again, which puts Obama's lead in that state by 9 points. So even if he lost 6 to 8 points, he'd still win the state. But all the other surveys, which range from the Columbus Dispatch's 6-point lead for Obama to Mason-Dixon's 2-point lead for McCain, mean that if race enters the equation, the state could end up having its electoral votes credited to McCain, with the legendary conventional wisdom being that the Republican who carries that state, more likely than not, will win the White House. So as it stands, the surveys have Obama enjoying a 7-point lead over McCain, but with 7 points also being in the undecided camp. Aside from deciding who will be their next president and vice president, Americans too will be electing their senators and representatives. On the Encyclopedia Britannica blog, a survey of the pundits predicts that not only will Obama win, but he will also enjoy a commanding majority in both houses of the U.S. Congress. And if you return to the map of votefromabroad.com, you'll see the numbers predicted, which are on the upper part of this screen. A Democratic majority of 58 in the U.S. Senate and 250 Democrats in the House of Representatives versus 183 Republicans, which points to a